And to begin with, I'd just like to introduce Annie Nam. She is the manager of Goods Movement and Transportation Finance Department at the Southern California Association of Governments. And she's just going to give a brief introduction to the program.
Thank you, Ryan. Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today for the Last Mile Freight Program workshop. We certainly appreciate everyone's interest and hope to be able to clarify any questions you may have about proceeding with the application process. So we have a rather full agenda today, including a presentation and a walkthrough of the application itself. And just to get things started, we're going to start with a brief round of introduction by the SCAG team. And I can start first here. As Ryan indicated, my name is Annie Nam, and I'm SCAG's manager of the Goods Movement and Transportation Finance Department. I'm going to kick it over to Scott to introduce himself, and we'll just go down the line.
Thank you, Annie. My name is Scott Strzelecki. I'm a senior transportation planner here at SCAG.
Karen?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Aceves. I'm Principal Management Analyst with the Goods Movement and Transportation Finance team.
And Ryan?
And I'm Ryan. I'm an Associate Regional Planner with the Goods Movement and Transportation Finance team.
Great. Thank you. So before we get started on the presentation that actually Scott is going to walk us through, the application details, I just wanted to provide some context about this program at SCAG. So for the past year, we've been working on the development of the Last Mile Freight Program, working in partnership with the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Committee, or MSRC. And we're actually here at SCAG very excited about the launch of this program. Certainly, last mile freight activity has been really a critical component of regional goods movement planning work, especially in the last few years. And as you all know, e-commerce has certainly had a profound impact on last mile delivery growth. And we've all seen this, especially in the last year, exacerbated with the pandemic in terms of frequency of deliveries. And certainly the rapid growth is most definitely expected to continue. And that said, at SCAG, we're very mindful of the associated region's air quality challenges, as well as the health impacts, particularly related to NOx and PM emissions. And our planning initiatives really reflect this foundational focus. And so with the adoption of our 2020 Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy, also known as Connect SoCal, it's the region's long-range planning document, we highlighted what we call the accelerated electrification and clean mobility strategy, seeking to really decarbonize or electrify vehicles, including those within the goods movement sector. And the Last Mile Freight Program really serves as the first step towards implementing this vision or strategy. And so we have a total of $10 million for phase one available for local businesses to help commercially deploy zero emission or near zero emission heavy and medium duty on-road trucks, including equipment and supporting infrastructure. And as I said, it's really an important step for us, and we're truly excited about the potential for partnerships with all of you. So with that brief introduction and context, I'm going to turn it over to Scott on our team, who's going to walk you through the detailed presentation of the program, as well as the application process itself. Scott.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, Andy. Okay. Okay. All right, great. So good morning, everyone. Very excited and happy to have you all here this morning. So real quickly, for purposes of the agenda, we're going to provide a brief overview on the program. Andy's already kind of given us an aspect of that. We're just going to add a few more details there. And then we're going to walk through funding, eligibility, project requirements, application process with a kind of step-by-step, giving everyone a sense of how that web interface works, where applications will be being provided, the MOU template, and then key dates and deadlines before getting into the Q&A. So as far as the program overview, as Annie's been mentioned already, we basically have 2 phases of the program where phase 1 is specifically focused on commercial deployment of the near zero emission vehicles, equipment supporting infrastructure, part of SCAG's Connect SoCal plan. And we just wanted to highlight for you guys a little bit, some of the program goals, key things that are driving this. So obviously looking at reduction in GHG and criteria pollutants. We're also looking at potentially having greater transparency regarding public versus private supporting infrastructure, looking at informing needs, addressing challenges to scalability. That's something that's highly important for kind of the public and private endeavors, specifically on infrastructure side and how those things could look on public side, as well as the benefits we can garner. And at the same time, we really want to make sure that, it's kind of from a partnership perspective, really understanding how better these technologies can provide a return on investment, operating efficiency for all the operators. And then also looking at achieving geographic funding diversity. The SCAG region, as everyone knows, is a vast area in Southern California. So really trying to look at different opportunities within that context as well. So for funding, as Annie mentioned, it's a $10 million program and provided by Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Committee. A couple of things we just want to highlight as part of that. Obviously, it's a 50% match, so we're looking for a 1-to-1 on those applications. And then at the same time, there is a funding maximum not to exceed $5 million. And then also, there's an area that's been carved out within the program as well to encourage small and medium-sized businesses to apply. We really see a lot of benefit, a lot of opportunity from this program to help facilitate, a wide diverse of different types of operators that are out there. So we view that as being a key element. And then at the same time, there's an opportunity to leverage other funds that may from other programs that may be ongoing as well. However, we just want to make sure that there are contingency plans included as part of that application, as we need to ensure that there is alignment between the timing of this program and others, and that there are other contingencies in the event something were to occur. For eligibility, we really are trying to organize this by the different types versus the technologies of the last mile focus. So that is organized into vehicles, equipment, and infrastructure. And we just want to reiterate that while we are looking for geographic diversity, the specific areas of that are contained within the South Coast Air Quality Management District Air Basin. And just to try to give a sense of, the entities that are available, we're looking at asset owners and operators, independent contractors, asset-light logistics players, as well as leasing companies. So the goal is really to have a broad opportunity for different entities, but at the same time, the focus is specific nexus to the last mile freight element. And that's what this slide is really trying to get at. We're trying to highlight that there are a lot of different ways last mile can work. I think everyone is very, very much familiar with any of the, whether you're at your home and as a resident or a business, any of the parcel package deliveries that are just kind of proliferating all over the place as a last mile direct delivery. At the same time, we also recognize that there's retail and wholesale trade, which has a lot of different elements, especially on, as we look at business to business interactions as well, omni-channel. There's all kinds of different elements that have been unfolding with respect to last mile delivery and consumption. And then at the same token, we also wanted to just highlight some of the other potential freight areas that could still be within that nexus, as again, trying to not preclude any last mile related elements, but at the same time, want to make sure that for application purposes, that nexus can still be made regardless of the different elements. As it relates to equipment eligibility, we're looking at any potential technologies for trailer equipment that could also be a component of that. And at the same time, we wanted to also provide a direct connection with any operation equipment. Again, trying to focus on facilities or areas that are specific to where that last mile delivery would be coming from as an extension of the actual vehicles potentially being loaded, unloaded, et cetera, that are making those final mile deliveries. And then the infrastructure piece is obviously very critical. We continue to recognize that relationship throughout this program, as well as a lot of the planning efforts that we're working on. It's understood that, you know, any of these new technologies would obviously be dependent for operational purposes on the actual charging, fueling, whatever type facilities are required to operate the vehicles. So, you know, that's something that obviously needs to be a direct component. And the way it is kind of organized in the program guidelines is, you know, we're trying to be flexible where there could be a focus on vehicles, there could be a focus on infrastructure, there could potentially be, you know, a hybrid or so. You know, we're not trying to preclude how that could look in an application perspective. We just want to make sure that those elements are all highlighted, and again, that the nexus is related to last mile operations directly. So kind of to summarize some of the key project requirements here, obviously the location within the Air Quality Management District Air Basin, the 4 county areas. The project needs to be completed by June 30th, 2023. The project must be operational for a period of 6 months. So that automatically kicks to the project needing to begin no later than you know, late December, January 2023 in order to meet that 6-month requirement. And then obviously, you know, the critical linkage between the project and air quality improvement being a core driver. Okay, so at this time, we're going to kind of transition into the application process. So the materials that we have are that are required include the online application with the following uploads of the scope of work, the budget, the map, as well as letters of commitment. And then optional, we also have areas where there can be further letters of support, as well as additional data. And when I get to that area, I'll kind of zoom in on that. But the additional data is really meant there to, in the event we recognize that as there's questions that need to be answered, the benefit of, you know, having textual answers is important, but at the same time, we don't want to take away if there's really good additional detailed information that can be provided in a different document format. You know, we really encourage everyone to use that additional data area to help support benefits, value, you know, specifics, whatever can help any applicants. Explanations or clarity. We really want to make sure that there's an opportunity for that as well. So this is the actual landing page for the program, and you know, obviously, I believe many of you probably have been at this page already, and looking through all the different pieces of information. So we've got the call, and you know, all the different information items and elements that are required to be reviewed, you know, read and understood, et cetera, as well as links to different documents, whether it's the scope of work, the budget, other items, et cetera. So all that information is contained there. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to kind of go through the process if, you know, as a example of any applicant who would be attempting to apply. And, you know, this is going to be really just kind of a high level walkthrough. So I think, you know, very basic is the applicant information, primary applicant, obviously all the details of what those pieces of information are. Here's, you know, small size business designation, point of contact information, any authorized representation, et cetera. Sub-applicant information is not necessarily required. When an applicant actually goes through this, though, there's asterisks that are denoting areas that are required versus ones that aren't. So sub-applicant may not be required depending on the application. So anyways, primary sub-applicant contact information all to be filled out there. Project information, this is where obviously designation of what type of equipment is being proposed, project title, description, project location, getting at one of the 4 county areas of the air basin, as well as uploading of map information to include that or to be provided for that to be clear. Split of the total project cost, funds being sought, as well as match information, and then understanding of the distinction between cash and kind amounts, funding sources, et cetera. And then here again, this is where talking about leveraging other potential programs, we'd want further information on how that would look, as well as contingency plans. Project benefits, these pieces of information here are in order to help get at details that are very valuable in helping review of the projects be provided. So fleet composition by fuel type, vehicle data looking at baseline information versus what the new technology would be doing, as far as for vehicle specific information there, the different types of vehicles, the technology, project type, et cetera. And then infrastructure, similarly, just trying to understand this is all the baseline versus the new infrastructure, and all the different elements that will be helpful for review of the application, especially when we're trying to consider some of the emissions information. So trailer equipment information, very similar. And then, different other aspects, looking at operational characteristics, vehicle miles traveled, and all those sort of things, but to help get at expected pollutant reduction. And then as part of that, this is the area as mentioned before, letters of support, any of those type of details that can be helpful for the application. So here is for the project description, this is just kind of a run through of different questions, looking at, just explaining what the project is, operational needs, deployment, et cetera, challenges, as well as opportunities for scaling these technologies. And again, for all these areas, it's very, again, if there's any specifics beyond just kind of providing context, that's where we want to have more of those documents and pieces of information provided at the end, where there will be a section for that. So for fleet and infrastructure components, again, proposed capital investment information, looking at vehicles being procured and potential to convert additional vehicles, turnover history, et cetera. Data elements, this is an important area here where we want to understand, daily operations as expressed in vehicle miles traveled, comparison of emissions performance from non-ZE, NZE vehicles versus the vehicles for different routes and other kind of operational characteristics, as well as looking at some additional information as well, kind of getting at those data elements. And here, this is where I continue to mention, additional data elements, additional documents. We really want to make sure that there's an opportunity that, knowing the project areas is highly important, but at the same time, route or any more detailed specific information is all very helpful. So we encourage everyone to upload as much as possible. And then again, some of the overarching project needs, considering different fueling or charging relationships and needs, and then looking at other vehicle relationships, et cetera. And then project readiness, obviously very important in understanding all the elements, procurement for vehicles versus and equipment versus development of infrastructure, making sure that all the different elements are organized depending on what the project focus is. Collaboration and partnerships, also very valuable in understanding how that looks, whether, as an example, third parties such as utility companies, et cetera, and then any letters of intent or other documentation that would be needed for that. So project location, again, just making sure that we can confirm that the project is indeed a part of the air basin. And as I had stated earlier, any other further specifics or detailed information that may be helpful to clarify operational characteristics. And then any, required approvals, obviously, as we were talking about, contingencies or making sure that there's implementation risk, making sure that everything is clear as to what the needs are, so expectations can be understood clearly, or backup contingency plans can be understood as well. And then other project risk mitigation strategies, just making sure that there's an opportunity to clearly explain any of those that may be necessary for part of the application. And then we have a scope of work, as I mentioned, that is, we have program guidelines as well as a scope of work template. So this is just meant to be there as a resource with all the different tasks and different elements that are required, and as a part of helping to kind of set the way that the project is going to be laid out and how it is going to be implemented. So once that's kind of provided and completed, we have an area for that to be uploaded. Similarly, for the budget and schedule, wanting to make sure all the cost and budget distinguishing characteristics are organized. We have a template to be filled in for that. So we've tried to make that as seamless as possible, and then at the same time, an area to upload that information. Once all those elements are completed, everything filled in, we have our final signature page. Again, all these areas are organized and what is needed to be filled in versus mandatory versus what is not. And final submit button. And once that is done, you get your confirmation that the application has been received and everything has been completed. So the next piece of information here focuses on the evaluation. As I was mentioning, all the different areas that are being filled in are going to be very important and very helpful for the evaluation process. So this is just giving us the overview of how the information is going to be scored based on criteria. So we have our project summary area. Again, the key focus of looking at the emission reduction benefits through commercial deployment. Looking at any innovative or competitive advantages over conventional operations. Ideally, we're hoping that technologies can provide strong operating benefits as well. And then project readiness. Again, we have laid out a schedule that we think is somewhat realistic for sure, and in some ways, maybe depending on different technologies, could be considered aggressive. But we want to make sure that the project is able to meet all of these requirements, and at the end of the day, we want to see a very successful outcome of all the different projects that are completed and can have all their elements summarized at that time period. So we need to ensure that that can occur. And then looking at funding requests and cost effectiveness. Ideally, again, getting back at these new technologies, it would be great to see operation and maintenance resulting in lower costs. But at a minimum, we want to see that they're competitive with traditional operation and maintenance costs. That's obviously very important from an operator perspective. And then we are looking at a benefit cost score defined as a ratio of NOx and PM 2.5 equivalent reduction per dollar of investment. So as far as the MOU process is concerned, the term of the MOU will be once it is completed and agreed upon through June 30th, 2023, or sooner, you know, depending on if where the stage of a project may be and how long, as long as it meets that 6-month operation requirement. So again, just to reiterate, you know, the 6-month operation period is highly important because it is going to be focusing on some data collection and making sure that there is information to report at the end of this program. So the MOU current template currently as is developed is organized into kind of 4 sections that we've highlighted here. So there's the introduction, focusing on the recitals, the MOU scope, et cetera, roles and responsibilities, administration, which is, you know, pretty more just kind of your typical administrative information, and then exhibits. So for the introduction piece, the recitals and the MOU, as I said, I mean, this is pretty much your standard MOU information where it's talking about the overall terms of the MOU, et cetera. And then looking at the roles and responsibilities, you know, these are kind of some of the important areas where it's scope of work is being defined, the term, project management, the funding, the match, indirect costs, invoice, and progress reports. So this kind of, you know, lays out all of the key elements and items that are being entered into between SCAG and each project applicant. And in the exhibits, again, these are the specifics as mentioned as part of the application process. Once a project would be selected, as part of the MOU process, there would be a scope of work completed as well with project schedule and funding, invoice form, which obviously would be connected to reimbursement for the match, and then a progress report template and final report template. So similarly to the application process where we've tried to make things as seamless as possible, organizing information that can be filled in and provided at the same time, any project that is selected and awarded. Then similarly for the MOU template, and once an MOU agreement is completed, finalized, we will have those other additional templates to support the implementation efforts for the 6-month operating period, data collection, and progress report and final report. Okay, so as far as the schedule, the program was launched just recently, obviously May 10th. Today is our workshop, May 18th, and we are setting a deadline for the rest of the month of May for any questions or, you know, any further clarifications that are needed as part of the application process. And we will be making our effort to starting with the end of this week to be updating our Q&A, or sorry, our frequently asked question document to make sure that all questions are addressed. As part of this presentation, and once it's completed here, we are going to have a Q&A session, and, you know, we will definitely answer all the questions that we can. We would just want to caveat that there may be a couple of questions that, you know, we may need to think about a little bit and come back. But the goal is really by this Friday to kind of have an updated frequently asked question and answer, or with all the answers there, responses. And then by June 4th, that would be the final frequently asked question posted, which would have all of the questions asked throughout the process, all the responses as a resource. And then application deadline, mid-July, July 14th. So, you know, we're trying to give ample time for an opportunity for all potential applicants to be reviewing all the materials, getting all their questions, kind of having a little bit of that back and forth. So a good, you know, over 2-month period to really feel confident about getting those applications completed and submitted. And then based on our review and selection process leading into when applications can actually, a proposed project list can be approved and posted. September is the time frame when that is going to occur. And we just want to reiterate, based on the information and what we need, all projects must be operational by the end of December 31st, 2022. And that is just a requirement based on the 6-month operational period that we need to, update progress reporting and final reporting from data collection elements. And again, just want to reiterate, make it clear, all awardees must enter into an MOU with SCAG. We currently have an MOU template, and we understand that as projects are selected and approved, though that template will then be, finalized on a project-by-project basis. And lastly, we just want to kind of make also highlight of our tools that we have available. Again, most of you are probably familiar with the website already and taking a look at that. So we have our fact sheet, we have our frequently asked questions, we have a toolkit, we have email opportunity for anyone to ask any questions that they may have in the program that will be received and considered and answered. And then from the toolkit purposes, and or the fact sheet, I mean, these are great resources in the event there's, any interest in someone wanting to, push information out further or disseminate further to any other parties that they may feel could be interested in this program. And with that, I think I will go ahead and turn it over to Ryan to begin the Q&A session.
Thank you, Scott. So just to remind everyone, in addition to this webinar being recorded and being posted to the Last Mile Freight Program website, we will also be sending the slides to those of you that, well, clearly everyone here that has registered and anyone else who is registered for this webinar. So we're going to move into the Q&A session. We haven't received any questions within the Q&A tab itself. So I think the best thing to do next is just to open it up for open Q&A. I would ask for everyone to please use the raised hand feature, and we'll take questions as they're coming in. If you are participating by phone, please raise your hand by pressing *9. And then once you're called upon, you can unmute by pressing *6. And as Scott already mentioned, while we intend to answer every question that comes in, we do recognize that some questions may require further discussion. And in that case, we would try to get back to the specific person, and all questions that we try to address will be added to the frequently asked questions on the Last Mile Freight Program website. So yeah, we'll just wait for the questions to come in. And it doesn't appear that we have any questions yet. I don't know, do we have any FAQs that we immediately want to address? Karen, do you have some ideas?
We have received some questions from emails that came in through the Last Mile Freight Program email address. So we can go ahead and just start with some of those that we received. And one of the first ones that comes to mind is, do we need origin and destination maps as part of the project proposals? And I think, Scott, you might be the best person to answer that one.
Okay, so the question is, do we need origin and destination maps as part of the proposals? Again, I think the key thing is like kind of a tiered approach. So the first need to be considered is obviously in the Air Basin 4-county location. From there, we are interested in getting as much information from that point as possible to help better understand some of the characteristics of the operation. So routing information and origin destination information is important for that. So, as I mentioned before, we really want to get those pieces of information to help us kind of get a sense of operational characteristics. And, those details are very helpful in informing that application process, as well as, getting into the reporting elements of any projects that are selected. So I would encourage everyone to provide as much detailed information as possible for that.
Thanks, Scott. And it does look like we've got some questions coming in through the Q&A as well as the chat. So thank you all for using those features. The first one is from Kelsey, and they are asking, can funding be stacked with other grant funding? If so, what is the max allowed?
Yes, the answer to your question is yes. We encourage other funds to be leveraged in this program. The funding maximum that the grant will pay out is $5 million. So it's 1-to-1 matching. So you have to have a 50% match. If you want to leverage all with other funds, you can do that, but you have to, obviously, if you're funding within your own agencies and there's some skin in the game, that's weighed a little bit stronger. And it's important and necessary in the application to include the mitigation if that funding were not to come through. One other thing that I would note is that if you already have that funding, you can only use that funding and pay it out through the same program period as the LMFP program. So if you start spending on the funding now, it won't be reimbursed.
Thanks, Karen. Scott, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, cool. So the next one I'll go to comes from Kate. And Kate asks, when modeling out the emissions reductions for proposals, do you have any specific methodology we should be following? Or should we use our own models and reference them?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I can try to take this one. I think that this may be a question where we may want to just have a little bit of discussion on this. I mean, the main intent of this program, recognizing this newer focus on last mile freight, is we really the goal of it was to try to capture everything that is last mile oriented. But at the same time, obviously we didn't want to preclude any areas maybe that we could miss or things like that. So I think that as part of that, from the emissions reductions perspective, we may just want to circle back on this one a little bit, and then we'll definitely make sure that we post that response.
Thanks, Scott. And Karen, I just want to confirm, it looks like you're answering some of the questions through typing, is that right?
No, I think I may just have clicked on one.
Okay. Then I'll go to this next one, which is excuse me if I mispronounce any names, but this is from Laurel, and Laurel is asking if there is a specific type of project and would just like some concrete examples of the types of projects that are eligible under this program.
I can take an initial stab at that, and then if anyone else has any further comment, feel free. So, going back to the other here, maybe I'll go back to one of the other slides real quick to help look at that a little bit. So I think when we're trying to look at last mile freight delivery, I mean, there's kind of two buckets you can consider that. So there's kind of business to consumer, business to business. That's kind of the way we're terming it. So if you live at your home in a neighborhood, apartment complex, wherever, obviously there's deliveries being made to those residential areas, and the substantial majority of those are coming from kind of your typical parcel package delivery companies. Same thing can be happening at businesses. And then depending on, the establishment, the business establishment, there can be a lot of other things going on where it gets a little more complicated. So, you could be going to your Home Depot and buying a good, you could be ordering online and picking it up, et cetera. And, obviously there is a last mile touch point with vehicles going to that location. So, trying to get at some examples, those are kind of some of the key examples that we feel kind of hits on this last mile, and why the focus was considering heavy duty and medium duty vehicles, because you can definitely have tractor trailers doing deliveries to business last mile, as well as in some cases for with the increase in e-commerce activity, you can even have it going into a residence, delivering a washer or dryer, a less than truckload potentially. So, we're trying to broadly, as best as we can, capture all of those potential last mile deliveries. So I'll go ahead and stop there. And I don't know if anyone else has any other comments on that.
I don't have any further comments. The next question, it states, I have a company as large and as big as Amazon. Am I eligible to participate in the program?
I'll take that one. The answer is yes, you can absolutely apply to the program, just as long as it fits within the parameters.
Thanks, Karen. So the next question is, how have you reached out to the private sector to make them aware of this program? And or how can we, CTCs, help you?
We have sent out toolkits to a lot of our partner agencies that they can then disseminate to their interested participants or their contacts. Typically, information is sensitive, so we can't get the information, but we are happy to provide you with that toolkit and the fact sheet to disseminate within your contacts. But we have done several outreach attempts to those agencies. And if you'd like to email the Last Mile Freight Program at scag.ca.gov, it's lmfp@scag.ca.gov. We can send you that toolkit.
Thanks, Karen. The next one is, can applicants receive a partial ask? And as an example, request the max of 5 million, but only receive 2.5 million instead.
I think that, I don't want to get ahead of there's obviously going to be a review, selection, all that sort of stuff, going through criteria, assessing everything. But, I think that type of scenario, it could potentially happen. But at the same time, that's, again, that it's going to be dependent on, how the review process unfolds. But yeah, I think that that is a scenario that could potentially be an outcome.
Thank you, Scott. And the last question that we have in the Q&A right now is, what is the ideal location for the Last Mile Freight Program? And in fact, I feel comfortable enough to take that one. So all projects should take place in the South Coast Air Basin, which includes Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Orange County. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I'd also add the ideal location is where the routes that are going to create the most pollutant reductions, right? So within that air basin, the greater of a nexus you can create, then the stronger your project will be.
Thanks for adding that, Karen. And we do have another question, a follow-up coming in, which is an interesting one. It's asking if we will have any preference for AB 617 communities. And I can start to answer this question in a bit, but I'm curious, Scott or Karen, if y'all have any thoughts on this or are familiar with AB 617.
Hey, Ryan, this is Annie. I can chime in on this one.
Sure.
Yeah, most certainly, I think the freight impacted communities in particular is of significant concern to SCAG, and we will take that into consideration. It's not specified so in the program guidelines, but we'll definitely take that into consideration.
Yeah, I don't think I could have answered that any better. So the next question is, for warehouse and distribution facilities, will first mile count as well as the last mile?
I'll take a stab. I mean, this is an area where, you know, when we talk about the nexus, the focus of this program, I mean, for the most part, is last mile freight delivery. So when we think about the nexus, that's kind of the key there. Again, you know, we envision when we developed this, the vision was kind of like, you know, where are those kind of touch points where the final product or delivery is occurring and consumption is taking place. And again, you know, we just didn't want to in some way say it's A and B and that's it. So we tried to be more broad in the language just to try to make sure that we can capture anything that we potentially, you know, could miss from, you know, just thinking that we had everything just all dotted out, you know, straightforward. So that's the key. The key is just that nexus to last mile freight element, and if that can be made, you know, based on, you know, how different types of supply chains work, or maybe some's focused more on e-commerce versus others that are still, you know, looking at some of the brick and mortar, omni-channel, all those different type of elements. We just want to make sure that there is a wide enough range of opportunity, but at the same time, just keeping to that nexus of the last mile delivery element.
Thanks, Scott. So the next question is, can there be a stacking of uses with the infrastructure? So for example, electric vehicle chargers that support both last mile delivery routes as well as individuals living in those communities.
I would say that anything that has that connection to last mile delivery from an infrastructure perspective would be, you know, available, or sorry, not available, would be, you know, a scenario that could be considered. Yeah, I mean, yeah, as long as there's that connection that it is last mile delivery vehicle, and then at the same time, you know, just to be clear, this is something maybe I don't know if it's clarified in the presentation. I don't think so, but you know, anytime there is an infrastructure focus, you know, we always need the data element and the information on the vehicles that are as far as the 6-month, you know, operating period progress. So obviously, if there's a project focusing specifically on the vehicle, you know, the vehicle does that. But then at the same time, on the infrastructure side, we do need to have a vehicle relationship as far as reporting. I know that's a little further information, but yeah. So I think the answer is yes. That could be considered, and then, you know, just trying to clarify a little more on the vehicle infrastructure relationship.
Thanks, Scott. And it looks like we've exhausted the Q&A list. So, you know, I'll hold space for, oh, it looks like there's another question that came in. All right. Okay. It says the veterans want to serve the public ones. Actually, I think I need to read this over to to better understand the question. In fact, whoever has posted the question, you can also use the raise hand feature and ask it live. I don't want to misask a question. We do want to make sure that these are all answered in an accurate way. And one thing you could do as well is reach out to us via the chat. That is just between you and the panelists, and we can try to address this question after this workshop as well. Unfortunately, I'm just having a difficult time interpreting it based on what was written. But it seems that that is the last question that we have for now. And we just got to thank you in the chat. So thank you for attending. We appreciate it. And I suppose that at this point, at this point, if nobody has any raised hands, which again, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, then maybe Scott, Annie, Karen, any last words?
I did see a question come in, and maybe we can answer it here, even though, well, I think it says, would portable charging solutions be considered infrastructure? Maybe it just hasn't populated on your end. Scott, do you want to take this one? Would portable charging solutions be considered infrastructure?
I think that we've tried to lay out anything that can be considered that relates to last mile delivery, and we're not trying to preclude items in any way. But at the same time, I think we just need to have enough information to clearly understand the relationship of that, and be able to be. The main thing is understanding, like, does that diminish in any way, range potential, et cetera, just make sure that we understand it fully. But again, the goal is, just making sure that nexus is there, any charging infrastructure that supports that. So I don't think we're precluding anything other than, just making sure that there's an operational connection to vehicles, and that everything is laid out clearly in the application of how those dynamics relate to each other, so that we can, further evaluate it as a proposal.
Thanks for answering that one, Scott. So we do have another question that's come in through the Q&A, and it asks, are you looking for solutions that are really tailored to a site that have exceptionally high cost benefit, or for solutions that may be less performant, but widely usable across the SCA QMD?
I'll take an initial stab at this. I think as part of the evaluation, we're looking at scalability, return on investment, and GHG emission or pollutant reductions. So potentially both and or either. So if there's something that this project brings that's innovative and can be scaled, or brings something that is of equal value or adds significant value, then we're looking for that. And just the same way, if there's a project that significantly reduces pollutants, then we're looking for that as well. So there's not one or other specific. We're just trying to make that public partnership public-private partnership information, the transparency of what the challenges are in the region, the return on investment, and the scalability. So as you're going through the application, keep that evaluation component in mind. And Scott, I don't know if you have something to add to that.
That's good. Great answer, Karen. The only thing I would just kind of add would be, I think kind of straightforward, kind of what's key, what's important is from the public side. Obviously, the benefits are very important. There's a lot of focus on this, and that's why we want to see those type of benefits. On the private side, I would say we want a company to be able to operate, and scalability directly connects to looking at these new technologies, the commercial deployment aspect, to get a better sense of, there's a baseline right now of how companies operate today, and they want to see that's be able to be the consistency moving forward with new technology, and or hopefully maybe an improvement on that. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It's a couple bookends here. Public sector, we really want these benefits. We want to understand better how we can partner, how we can help or leverage or be a part of this. But then at the same time, private sector, we want everyone to be able to grow their business, to do what they need to do as well. So I mean, those are the key areas that we can really see some success through this program. If we can kind of hit on both of those, that's kind of the goal.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Scott. It looks like we have another question that's coming in through the chat. And it says, major construction projects like building, fueling infrastructure sometimes meets unforeseen delays. Would you have any flexibility on the operations deadline of December 2022 if the project is awarded and encounters some construction delays?
I would say ideally this is, this is why we want a lot of implementation information, risks, key risks identified, any third-party information, letters of intent, all of that information, as well as contingency plans, because this is something we want to avoid. Ideally, we don't want to get into a great project that has all these, great elements, and we think, oh, this is going to be, exactly what what the region's trying to work towards, and then get into kind of the snafu of now we're trying to scramble and figure out of how can we make this work if there's delays, and into that whole gamut. So I think that we really need to have very clearly laid out risks and contingencies to mitigate those risks. And that being said, something, I guess, any unforeseen element outside of that would kind of be a new variable in the event if the project had been selected and awarded, and then that would be kind of a different aspect at that point. But for the purposes of the application, we really want to ensure as we review these projects that we have confidence that they have dotted all the I's, crossed the T's to the best of the ability to make sure that the project is going to meet the timeline. So I know that everyone's going to do that, and then after the fact, if we do get into an unforeseen scenario, I think we can't really get too hung up on that today. Today, we just need to try to ensure that we can, as best as possible, avoid that scenario. So I think that's how I'd couch it. So I don't know if Karen or any others have thoughts.
I think you nailed it, Scott. That's what so many questions in the application get at. Obviously, we don't know what we don't know, but that is one of the cost and implementation is 40 points of your application. So we really are looking at having, really close to, if not shovel ready projects, especially with infrastructure, because we do understand that there can be a lot of unforeseen delays. We know with easements or having utility companies come out, that could sometimes extend projects out by a year. And that's why we asked for those letters of commitment, like you said, Scott. And so we want to know that we did everything on our part to make sure that that project was going to be done by the deadline of December 31st, 2022.
Thank you both for answering that. I don't think I have anything else to add. And that seems to be it for the chat and the Q&A right now. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to bring up?
I would just say, just as a reminder, all of these questions will be added to the FAQ. So if you feel like you need to go back and kind of re-review the responses, there will be a formal response on the website under the FAQ tab. I don't know if you were going to say that, Ryan, but I just, it popped into my head. So
Always good to have an extra reminder. Okay. Well, that appears to be it in terms of the questions. Unless any of the panelists have like some final housekeeping things like Karen just had, then this might be it. Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I'll just, one last time before we all sign off, real quickly. I'll just put the schedule back up for a simple reminder. And Karen mentioned the Q&A. So yeah, end of May, June 4th is our deadline to have that wrapped up, and the final frequently asked questions posted early June. And then, again, mid-July 14th application deadline, and then, through the summer, really going through the review, selection of proposed list, and then ultimately getting that approved in September. So I think that's it. Just want to make sure everyone has all that information, and then we appreciate everyone's attendance, and we look forward to any further questions. We'll be happy to answer and make sure we can get as much information posted as possible to get that transparency out there. And definitely looking forward to all the applications that may be proposed in the next couple months here. So really appreciate the time, and thanks for attending.